Hey, Rhino, welcome to our chat, mate. It's good to have you. Hey, look, I think it would be awry of me not to start with a little bit of your background, which has led to your culture, mate, because you haven't come from a normal way of coaching pedigree and working up through professional sports. Can you just fill us in on how you've got to become a professional coach and how your background story has helped shape and influence the cultures you are part of?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I think it actually started when I became a father as an 18-year-old, and I had a pretty big decision to make just around what that looked like because we broke up, the partner and I ended up looking after my daughter full time and becoming a proper, like, real full time father as an 18-year-old really shaped, I suppose, this whole journey I've been on to where I am now. Um, and it gave me some real awesome skills and resilience, which I think has really shaped the way I coach now. And that start forced me to not only think about myself, like a real cool mantra I always learned, but also that came alive when I did become a father was the day you become a man is the day you love something more than yourself. And what that meant for me is everything that all my little visions and dreams and aspirations went into the actual survival of somebody else. That changes your life direction.
Yeah, doesn't it? Far out. It really gives you a slap across the face as an 18-year-old, right?
Yeah. So it forced me to kind of look at where can I best, firstly, be an awesome dad and look after as a young fella, but also what can I do quickly to kind of get the ball rolling around creating a good lifestyle for both of us. So that led me to go into teachers college, and the kind of the hours and the way that worked synced in with being a full-time dad as well. And hence I got a Bachelor of Education specializing in primary. And I suppose that's where the coaching journey really started. My first, I couldn't get a job in my hometown of Dunedin. It was a really tough market to get into, and I was probably the only person at the time with a handwritten CV. So I think that might have affected job prospects as well.
Well, yeah, that upgrade would have helped for your rugby as well, mate, with the amount of hours you do on the computer.
Yeah. So yeah, my first job was at Pepto Intermediate in 2004. So I moved my daughter and myself up there. I'd never been to Auckland, and it was a bit of a culture shock, to say the least. And then that's where the coaching actually really kicked in, because there's a real direct correlation between the stuff I did with the students and the kids of the school outside of the classroom, and then there was a real like the way they acted inside the classroom was way better. So I kind of realized early on that coaching and teaching are the same, and the relationship that you build outside of the classroom, what then happens in the classroom, made it way better for me. And it became an awesome behavior management tool. And you just had, like, way better relationships with the kids. And yeah, that gave me the bug, really. Just seeing that those two things kind of melding together, like coaching really well and truly helping people get better, and then you have these awesome, deeper relationships, and it actually,
What sort of stuff, Ryan, were you talking about when at primary school level with behavior management? So what sort of examples did you learn from that time?
I just think primary education is really tough because you've got a class of 30, um, and there's a lot of learning needs, learning behavioral issues in classrooms at the moment. And I found, if especially with young boys, like having that energy output outside the classroom in a structured way, and like having boundaries in a sporting environment, almost like really help them calm down and understand what we're trying to do in the classroom, and just carried those kind of same concepts, like real simple boundaries, real simple rules, got to do this before we can do that. Just those little things then going into the classroom help, especially those young boys.
Mm. And those young boys are generally the young rugby players that come through too, right?
Oh, totally. Like in South Auckland, where Pepto was, like it's just untapped. And you can see like kids all shoot off in different directions when they enter high school, and like that, like there's just kids that are lost to our game through circumstance that they don't really own.
Okay. And so you continue that, mate. Like you've grown that education passion, that behavior management skills stuff kept progressing as you went down your teaching.
Yeah, so I spent 8 years in the primary sector, and then a big move. I made a shift from primary to secondary school, so I actually went back and taught at my old school, Otago Boys High School, and that's when um, the kind of the rugby really kicked in. Before that, I was doing a lot of different sports, so basketball, touch, league, and rugby, of course. But that's when I specialised into rugby when I went to the secondary school scene, and kind of unshamedly set up like a semi-professional environment where the boys are in the gym, 4 or 5 times a week. We'd have review previews. So it kind of gave me a little bit of a taste of that almost professional aspect of rugby early on. But I was able to, that 9 years I had at Otago Boys High School as first team coach, I was able to make a lot of mistakes early on, which shaped what where I got to,
Yeah.
when I into the professional realm properly.
And I remember you saying you had to go to the rector or the principal and try schmooze to get class boys out of class to be able to watch that video to do the gym stuff. That's a skill in itself, isn't it? To
Yeah,
work out
yeah.
the ways in which you can advance your rugby program legitimately inside the school hours.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite a cool story because we used to have a study period. So the year 13s would have a compulsory study period, in their timetable. And so I went and talked with the rector if I could use that study period as a what I called sport class, where the boys would come to me. So they could opt in to either do study or come to sport, and we'd do rugby drills and different things. And yeah, it just started like that. And then it grew to the point, throughout the years, we ended up having, I think, 160 boys opting into the sport option instead of their studies. So yeah.
And that program went really good, didn't it? Otago Boys
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
a program which was not bottoming out, but certainly
Yeah.
underwhelming.
Yeah.
Went on to have some very successful results on a national scale.
Yeah, I think the one I was most proud of was from 2011 to 2018. We'd provided 33 boys to New Zealand schools or New Zealand barbarians, which was the most of any school in New Zealand. And that's kind of that's where I was able to hang my hat in terms of our player developments, because success is, dictated, especially at secondary school. It's a very fast cycle of ebbs and flows with who comes in. Generally, I only have a player for 2 years, so to have that kind of player development at the forefront was the biggie for me. And I was always proud of our boys would go into programs and just front. And that was part of what we were creating, a kind of a culture at our school.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Loved it. And then obviously professionally, mate, you finished the school and made the jump to professional, and
Yeah.
it's been a huge variety of roles since then, hasn't it? From Otago to the Asian Pacific Dragons head coach to the Rebels to Toyota, now at the Boston Free Jacks as the head coach. And again, they're particularly advancing that program similarly to the way you did with the school stuff has been really phenomenal. And this is your second time there. How did that manifest? That you're obviously doing great things, clearly doing great things when you're going back to the same place, and the people that were there enjoyed what you
Yeah.
did and got you back.
Yeah. Well, actually, a funny thing before we get to there is, I always remember when you came back and took over the head coaching role of Otago 2018, and you rang me and asked if I wanted to come down and do a session, in the preseason. It was like, with the academy boys predominantly. I remember saying to my partner, my wife now, Courtney, I was like, this will be the most important session I've ever done, because I thought if I did a good job, it might put my foot forward, because I knew you were looking for an assistant coach. I always remember saying to her, this is going to be the most important session I've ever done in my life.
Oh, mate, you nailed it. Yeah, absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, I think it's something I actually stole off you, which is, um, I love the concept of like the teams you've been with, like the people that you've been with are your cheerleaders. So wherever you go, if people were to ask about yourself, and that the team that you were with, the players especially, are your cheerleaders. And if that's the case, it means you're doing a pretty good job and developing people, and they enjoy what you do. So I think that's helped with my kind of all my different roles. If people were checking in on, oh, what did you think of Ryan and how did it go? And if I'm always pretty proud that most players, are my cheerleaders. So yeah, that's helped.
Yeah, mate. Well, just seeing you saying that, mate, I'll talk to this point because I just asked a few very experienced players just to give some thoughts, mate. And here's a quote on that from a very experienced player who's Super Rugby off over in UK and Japan. This is his quote about you on that front, mate. He's got a unique ability to relate to all the players in a quirky way, but at the same time challenges you as a player to get outside your comfort zone and be better. And I reckon, mate, just knowing you myself, that sentiment from the people I talk to, not that I needed to, that's rife, mate. Like just the way you are with people, the environments you create are outstanding. So that's the feedback from the inside, mate, around you as a coach. It's wonderful. And Ryan, how does the culture piece for you? What's your definition of culture based on your teaching background, your progression through professional rugby? How do you now see culture, and potentially how has that changed over the course of your experiences?
It's definitely changed, and um, I'll probably throw a cat amongst the pigeons, and I put vision first. Um, and like I know Phil Jackson talks about like vision as the source of leadership. Um, and I kind of I like to have a vision where if you talk about it, the hairs on the back of your neck kind of stand up. Like people are like, wow, okay. And I think for me, culture is how you get. So that's like a byproduct of having an awesome vision. Like, what are we going to be? What do we want to do? And what are we about? And then the culture almost fills that gap of, okay, that's kind of how we do things around here. That's the way I've almost evolved my thinking. And there's another thing I've been really looking deeply at. And it's around this concept that a team generally is the reflection of the coach's personality. And I've been thinking a lot around
Yeah,
that. Like, if you think of Jamie Joseph, you kind of know what type of team is coming at you. Like a Jamie Joe team, what they're going to be about. They're always going to stay in the fight. They're going to have stickability. And I've just noticed, just looking more into that, I think that has a big part of culture as well. So that once again, that's a tool that lends itself to, being a reflection of the coach's personality. And um, yeah, it's an interesting one. I just think I've really gone towards the vision thing, and then the culture being the tools to create that vision.
I think it's a really cool concept, mate. That well, not even potentially a concept, more of a reflection, is it? That the power you have as in that status as the head coach or the leader or whatever that role is. But when you actually stop and go, whatever I am, everyone that's potentially down the chain is going to pick up on that, and
Yeah,
that's going to go through. It's almost like parenting, isn't it? Where I know with my kids at the moment, man, like, they will go test everything, but as long as their inherent selves are the bits which I am, then
yeah,
that they should be relatively okay. I'll come back to me in 10 years' time with the little ones, and we'll see how that's played out. But I think you're right, mate. Like sometimes we don't actually like coaches don't appreciate the impact they have on everyone. That people are all looking up, and it's not just the things you say; it's the way you are, the things you do.
yeah,
That classic quote that I can't hear you because your body language is screaming so loud.
yeah,
That's all being picked up. It's been ingested and it's being spread throughout the
yeah.
galaxy of your team.
Yeah, I think back to Toyota, and just, with the way you started the morning was a connection piece and got the players to talk, which is probably quite tough for some of the Japanese, the style of the way they like to do things. And I always remember it ended up lending, like, players would then be asking questions. Like you put an emphasis on questioning. So, and that was like your personality kind of going into our team. And then it made any meeting we had, I definitely saw it now that I reflect on it, that especially our Japanese players were way more comfortable being questioned, but also asking questions. Whereas I think, and this is, just a big judgment, but I think a lot of their schooling and university and maybe previous rugby experiences have been, dictated to by above from a coaching perspective. And now that I reflect back on that time, I think, geez, we actually got the boys asking lots of questions. And a meeting wasn't just sit down, shut up, listen. It was like, right, let's engage and throw some ideas around. So I
Yeah,
think that
and
was another example of that.
you mentioned too, just in chatting before this, around you've just arrived. Well, when you arrive at a team, just that concept of the soft landing side of things, in terms of
Yeah.
you're getting into a team and not bogging them down with hardcore rugby, but actually using the time, particularly in those preseason things, to get an understanding. Can you just run through that kind of concept? Because I think it's
Yeah.
a really valuable one in a team culture.
Yeah, so the first thing we did, we had a big team Zoom call on December 18, um, knowing that we're all going to like physically be here Jan 5. And I thought it was really important when we did our Zoom call, because sometimes I think they can be very painful, is not to put any rugby content. But the first thing we talked to with the group of players was, here's our bye weeks in our MLR season. Here's the dates, and we're totally off. So we want you to organise with your partners, your families, your friends, like, explore America. This is your time. And that was just a cool example. I've already had some feedback. I had a feedback today from LaRue Milan, who's, well-traveled rugby player. And he's like, mate, that start just set a tone for everybody that, hey, this is true people first. It's not a poster on a wall, because it's saying we care about, the connections with your families and friends. Here's the time, go and use it how you see it. And we only did like a little bit of rugby content at the end, and that was more vision stuff, like this is where we want to go. And then the second part is I purposely made the timetable when we physically get here to have 5 days where players can come in, get used to driving on the other side of the road if they are from somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, which is a big one actually.
It's funny as it sounds, like little things like that freak you out a little bit. Like, get used to the food. It's very different. And it just means they can come in, they have a little bit of a flush in the gym. And it's just like like the coach just settles up beside you, and there's no rugby content. It's, how was the travel, and just genuine, comparing notes on American life already. I just think I love that type of start. And then it just means when you have your first team meeting, I've already got all the connections. I know the personalities I'm dealing with. So that first meeting can be way more intimate in terms of how I can talk to the group. And I think it's really important rather than going in cold, because then you're only using rugby as the connector. Whereas having these soft landings and having that time, rugby comes last. And that's the way it should be if you are truly caring about, the players feeling really welcomed. We do a really good job here. Like each player gets food packs given to them on arrival. Just really important little things like that.
Yeah, I love it, mate. Mate, I think this is a really a skill of yours, Ryan. Like, and here's another quote from another player that I just asked for around this. He develops relationships off the field, and I think through this creates an open line of communication with his coaching. That if he has an idea for a tactical change in the way we play, he can get the players' feedback to adapt how it's run. I've found this pretty rare in coaches. Most coaches often put up a wall when challenged. And I think that's like in part because of this kind of stuff that you do, mate. You put rugby aside, even though knowing you're very detailed around your rugby side of things, but you're also very detailed and planned around those connection pieces as well. And doing these sort of soft landings are great examples for me of how you're able to get more out of the guys, because they go, oh, he actually, well, and because you genuinely do too care about them as people. It's a fantastic cycle to get into, because they're not independent, are they? Those soft skills and the rugby, that you merge them together to get that synergistic effect, which compounds things immeasurably.
Yeah, I think like it's a tough thing, and it's more than just saying, oh, how's the family? It's I had 17 years in a classroom, and I was like a chameleon. I had to work out, geez, what does this class need from me? What character do they need? Okay, this here's my alpha male. How do I work with him? This is my at-risk kid. What does he need? And sometimes I remember one maths class, a bottom set maths class I was teaching, had a really, really real tough kid. And I just went over and I knew he'd be disruptive. He was really hurting other classrooms, and he was actually quite feared by teachers. And I went over to him and said, "Rightio, me and you are going to have a gentleman's agreement. You can sit at the back of the class. You can go on your phone. As long as you don't annoy me or the rest of the class, me and you're real good." And he did that. But the flow-on effect because I kind of addressed it straight away, he ended up starting wanting to be engaged with the class, because after a while he said, oh, this is actually quite cool. It's quite a settled classroom environment. There's like there's stuff I actually look like I would enjoy, little games at the end if things have been going good. And we ended up getting him engaged in our classroom culture because he wanted to be. It was like that concept that you want people to be part of your meetings. You don't want to have to tell people, oh, you're late. They shouldn't be late if they want to really be there. And that was where I got that idea, like, okay, what does he need? And then I'll use a lure at some stage to bring him back in with the group. But I'm not going to force them to be part of the group straight away, because it's not going to work, and it's going to take a lot of my energy emotionally and his, and then I'm not working with the people that want to be there.
So this is an incredible skill set to have, isn't it? When you then relate it to a rugby team, because a rugby team is largely 30 people, same as a classroom, and you have all the same dynamics at play there.
Totally.
In any classroom, you've got to have rules and boundaries, like you talked about at the start, but you've also got to be understanding of the different individualities of each person, isn't it, right? When you come back with your teaching, and like, I'm really intrigued in this question around some sort of myths in coaching from teaching or old school rugby that simply don't work, you reckon, in modern coaching, things that you've seen through your 17 years of teaching that you just go, this is what a lot of coaches do, which potentially isn't great for culture?
Yeah, I think I've been like coming in and being part of rugby environments. I don't know if the weeks are correct in the way we structure. And it's really funny, whatever rugby environment you go into, generally the weeks are the same. And I always have a funny thing, like when rugby went professional, someone just said Monday's your review, preview, Tuesday's the, whatever day, Wednesday's off, Thursday, then captains run, then game. And some teams have tweaked that slightly where you'd go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off. But the concepts are all the same. But if you look at proper like learning theory, and like I'm a massive fan of Doug Lemov, like he said you're always in a fight to forget. So in a 7-day cycle, if you're introducing some stuff on a Monday, you've got to touch that at least 4 times in the week. But when you're touching it, it's got to come from different teaching styles. There's also a funny thing, like learning styles was actually debunked in 2004. It doesn't exist, but teaching styles do. And I've actually experimented this with myself. A funny little experiment I've done just over here in America is normally when I use my Google Maps, I have the sound on, but I'm a real visual. I like reading, and if I was to go through the old school, learning styles, I'm meant to be a visual person, a reader, a writer. But what I've found is if I don't have the audio also telling me what to do when I'm going on my Google Maps, I actually freak out. So just visually seeing 30 feet turn right. I need the audio, but I've never been at audio.
Because you're still looking the other way, mate. You're looking the right way, you're freaking out over there.
Yeah, totally. But like, it's just funny. Like you're a product of, like, obviously your home environment. Like if reading's valued, then you're going to genuinely be a reader and understand it and appreciate it. But those that aren't exposed to reading doesn't mean that's not a learning style of theirs. Their family may never have read books, but they could be an awesome reader. You just don't know. So like I've really flipped around that. It's more teaching styles. And like whenever we do our content at the start of a rugby week, it's not having dominant days like this is attack day, this is D day, or this is whatever. It's like always interleaving the information so that we're just constantly in a fight not to forget, but you want to get them almost forgetting. This is what Doug Lemov talks about, and then hit them again. And then the bell curve goes up again. So when they first get information, it's 100%. Then near the end of that day, it drops off to about 50. And if you hit them again, the next day it goes back to 70. So it's like, a rugby environment doesn't really lend itself to that, because we have this funny rule, like Thursday training, you can't introduce anything new. Well, who's made that up? Like I've introduced stuff on a Thursday with, savvy players, and it's not an issue. So it's like there's just funny little unwritten rules in rugby weeks that I think someone's, made up when it first become professional. We've all just adhered by.
And what are you talking about when, like, I know, having seen you change up your style, what do you recommend is some good teaching styles generally for people to adopt or experiment with and mix up in terms of their own style?
Another cool example of this was, I remember when I had Otago in 2020 and we were playing a tough team, Northland, and I talked the head coach, it was Tom Donnelly, I talked him into I could just see the group was a bit down, and we'd lost 3 players to some disciplinary stuff. And we had some young fellas come in to take their spots. And I said, listen, I reckon this group needs something different this week. I said, if we do a normal rugby week, we could be put to the slaughter. And he was awesome. He adapted with me. And what we did is we actually didn't train on the field for the whole week. So we did our big learning day at the hot salt water pool. In the pool, we did our run through of all the things we wanted to do. And then after that, we broke into little groups and had coffee around St. Clair. It's a real nice place, little coffee shops. So you had like intimate little relationships. So the young fellas who were taking the spots of the boys who'd been dropped felt really comfortable. And we just did activities outside of rugby that, like, although they're probably freaking out, geez, am I getting my rugby content? What was coming from like the off-feet learning, it was like way deeper, way more meaningful than when we put it for our captain's round, which was the only time that we actually, had boots on as such. It was really clear, and we ended up putting 30 points on Northland, who are a really strong team. It was probably our best performance of the year, and it was the only time we ever entered the field was for a captain's run. We went to the hot salt water pool. We went into a little gymnasium area, did it again, but just gym shoes on, played basketball, had lots of meetings, lots of little coffee meetings, making sure we're real clear on stuff. So I think, like, in terms of a learning aspect, because there wasn't the threat of on the field going super fast and making mistakes as young fellas, they're getting it from a different way, like relaxed and lots of conversation and in a real intimate environment. Anytime we did it, we would have been in a real close quarter environment. Like there would have been no more than 20 meters by 30 meters, the whole team together that whole week. And it just like, I was like amazed at how good we were after that.
I think it's. Do you also think there's a little bit of psychology in those sort of moments? Because, like, if you want the players to be relaxed and play calm, and then you as coaches embodying that, but you're also embodying it by physically what you're doing. You're saying,
Yeah.
you're essentially saying to your players, "We know you're fit enough. We trust you know what you're doing. I have faith in you that we don't need to do a lot on field." That's what that's essentially saying, that we trust you enough that we can go to the pool and just walk it through in a pool and go for coffees.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that the players deep down are following that lead going, shit, these coaches actually trust and believe and know we've got this, so much so that they can do this. For me, that's the bit which I'm really intrigued at. Those sort of moments is what they put in heads, right?
Oh, totally. Like our captain at the time was Michael Collins, and he said exactly what you just said. At the end of the week, when we got to the captain's run, he said, what you've done is you've instilled trust because you've all been calm as coaches and said, hey, we believe in you. You guys have got this. We don't need to be on the field. Trust you. Here you go. And we were the freshest team version of our team that entered that Saturday match. And as I said, 30 points later against a really good Northern team, we're kind of like, wow, we've found something here.
Yeah, and the special bit too, I reckon, is that'll be the bit that's remembered. Like when you talk about that year or that season, if players are reflecting on cool things, it's not even probably the results. It's some of those cool connection pieces. Remember when it's the pool when we did that?
Yeah.
That'll be something that we're just talking about. I have another one for you, Ryan. You talked about the questioning earlier, and I know this is something which I've picked up from you, and you talked about. Different teaching styles, but questioning is something which a lot of almost is pushed on coaches that do a lot of questioning. Sometimes and often it goes too far with that questioning in terms of it becomes a little bit condescending. I remember a player sometimes as a player hearing lots of questions, and I just want to know, just if you know it, tell me. Don't patronize me with all these questions. And a lot of coaching courses talk about do the question. You got a question, got a question. So. But there's a real art to doing questioning well, isn't there? Can you just sort of expand on your thoughts around that, as you call it, keeping those questions or the answers in your back pocket?
Yeah, I'm massively passionate around this because it just breaks me. And it's like an old school teaching methodology. Like you hide the knowledge and like you ask the kid that doesn't know it and he's, he's found out. So you're like, oh, you don't know that. And just give them the knowledge. And I think then let that be played with, and that's where maybe cool questioning will come out of. So, for example, in a rugby sense, one thing that I'd always do is if there was an opportunity, just say it was 5 attackers versus 3 defenders, and we're looking from the attacker's perspective, I'd maybe have a still shot, a screenshot of that situation, and maybe we didn't execute it. But I'd start with, I can see what you're trying to do here. So you can see the option that they want that they did at the time. And then you'd say, what else? I wonder what else. Like, so you have that curiosity. And then we're throwing, it's not like, oh, what should have you done? And the player's like, well, yeah, I can see it now. This is in hindsight. Where it's like, this is not a future-based solution. We're talking about something, yeah, I wasn't going fast enough, so there's no way I could have done what you're saying, that beautiful square hands you're talking about as a coach. So like, I'm always come from it from that lens. So then it's like, okay, so you're overrunning, so there's no way you could have pulled the square hands. So what do you reckon could we do? And he might say, maybe I should have hit the seam and offloaded to the guy inside. But like, yeah, rather than questioning, and I've given them the knowledge, like we know what the outcome was. I'm not questioning that. What we're looking at is, okay, where is the growth in this little bit of a moment? Like, I can see what you're doing and totally understand it. And then he gives you the context. Oh yeah, I was going too fast to do that. What was probably the clearest option. So you just give him the picture. You're not critiquing, you're just correcting the stuff in front of you. And I think I've always found that's a bugbear of mine in reviews. Like, you know yourself, when you're an open side flanker, like you miss a tackle in a game, you know why you missed it after you missed it. You don't need to be shown on Monday, Ben, here's you missing this tackle. Like, you've already gone through it and you hit probably 80 times because you take, and
correct. Yeah. Gone out drinking till 3 a.m. just to drown my sorrows around it.
Yeah. You don't need to be, as a good coach, I know that's been here, and he will take that personal. I don't need to go through that with him in the review and put him out in front of the rest of the players, because that's an easy coaching moment for me. Naughty Ben, missed tackle, easy. Yep. I get a tick in the box. Oh, he's a hard coach. He calls out stuff. But a smart coach would know Ben Herring always makes his tackles. That's going to hurt him more than anyone else. And it's just, like, then I'd look at, is it a systematic thing? Why did he not trust inside or something? That could have been the simple outcome. You're thinking of two things at the time. That's why you had a weak shoulder.
Yeah. I love it, mate. That, and even reviewing those questions, like with that vision decision, as opposed to having the answer, like, what did you see first, and then what did you do? I saw that example, except I was running too fast, so then my decision was X. And then that's that thinking process, and what you're really good at is creating that sort of curiosity, as you say, and I love that. And I think that's a really interesting crossover, isn't it, about the questions, how to balance that well. Did you find that, like, you learned that stuff through the schooling stuff, where the questionings had to be a little bit different?
Yeah, totally. Like, it just broke me if you're at the front of a classroom, and you're just like hiding knowledge from the class, and you're just getting nothings. And then as soon as you kind of questioning that way, you find people don't put their hands up. It's quite a cool experiment for me, because I go back to my wife's class. She's got new entrants. And the first start of the day for them is they sit on the mat, and children will present news. So stuff that happened the weekend. They might have a new soft toy, anything, a photo from what they did. And when it comes to questioning, and I'm not making this up, every kid puts their hand up. They've all got a question. And if you think of like schooling, if you then went through to like 13-year-olds, no one will put their hands up. And then if you go to security, the person showing the news is almost ridiculed. It's like, thinks he's the man. Like, did that in the weekend. Like, we've flipped it so far the other way. And I'm just trying to, like, I'm really passionate about getting a rugby environment back to that new entrance class where everyone's curious and they want to put their hand up and they want to, like that. There's something in that for me.
I think you're right, mate. I think any a review of yourself in a meeting, particularly as a professional coach, but any sort of coach, is the amount of hands that go up show that people are invested and engaged and confident enough to do it. And that comes back to the cultural piece, which you've created an environment where people are excited to be there. And I think that's massive. Really good. Right. And mate, what I also loved about the way you coach is not only that you think about this stuff a little bit different, but you also bring a little bit of difference too when you are presenting. I've often chatted about yourself as that mad scientist approach to stuff, and I love that analogy you've used a couple of times about, you always remember the scientist that blew up the lab as a student. And
Yeah.
that's kind of, I love that about the way you coach and your way you deliver, particularly as players like often leave your meetings like singing a song about what you were talking about, or you match music, or you do something humorous. So you really, it seems like each delivery team meeting that you do, you're trying for a real different outcome, and you're trying to make things stick through quirky ways. Can you sort of run through your methodology of why that mad scientist approach you use that in your cultures?
Yeah, so it comes from teaching again, like as you mentioned. If you know you're going into a classroom and this teacher's like a wee bit quirky and geez, you don't know what's going to happen. You're kind of on the edge of your seat, and you tend to like remember it more because you're kind of looking for that time. And that's what I enjoy about coaching. I love the meetings, and I put a lot of time and energy into getting that right. Like you look at when a song is sung really well, and like someone really, you can tell that really means something. Like I think of Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam when he sings Black. Like at some stage in his life, he's had like a horrendous relationship,
Yeah.
experience. Because the way he sings that song, when he does it live, his eyes are closed, and it's like delivery for me in meetings is the most crucial thing. Like, and it's been really like bold in the type of character that what does the group need? Um, and like, is there a way to deliver this message using some type of teaching style, like whether it's music or like, as you said, a little chant that will stick with them? Um, but getting a clear message across, is obviously super important. But I think that experimenting with your delivery styles, and geez, if you're remembered for the little chant, but they forget everything else, but the chant is actually a key thing for the week, then you've nailed it. If a little song you've used really reflects where you're going and has some resonance with how you want to play a style that week, that's a winner straight away. And I don't know, I just think sometimes we're not bold enough with our delivery styles and being really brave. And that's what excites me. And to be honest, you probably know this, but I practice it a lot. So like I'll wake up at 3 a.m. knowing I've got this crucial meeting in the morning, and I'll just keep running through my head. And then when I get to the office at 7 a.m., I need my own time. And while I pretend that I'm on my laptop, I'm actually just looping what I'm going to do in the meeting in my head. So people look at me at 7 a.m. and want to maybe come and ask me something, but look, I'm grumpy on my laptop. But what I'm doing is just practicing the importance of that delivery to the meeting. And then I go in there kind of, it's like Tony Robbins, like before he goes and does a real awesome presentation, trampoline, like he gets his energy up. Like
You're
I
like
need
the
that.
you're like the mini me version of Tony Robbins, though, mate.
I just need that prep time because I know how important it is. And I treat every meeting like that, even if it's like a units meeting. It's a different style. Like I'll tend to sit down on a chair and be at the same level as the group, it's almost like a kind of a campfire situation. And we'll have maybe some screen time and some questioning. I'll throw something weird out. And then I find that really builds a cool little environment.
Yeah, having seen it done, mate, like I think you really do that. Do you actually have, like, when you talk about building that type of character you want to be in when presenting, do you have a sort of a variety up your arsenal around what you're going to go in? So today is this guy, and you've got this guy sort of perfected. Do you have anything like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
set list of characters that you
Yeah.
pull out?
I think when I go back to teaching, like I had 17 years in the class, and I was a real chameleon. Like I practiced different styles of like delivery, and then it gave me this kind of cool arsenal that I can pull out at any time. Um, and I like watching like live music. I remember I went to a punk concert with yourself. We were in Nagoya, and like the energy in the room, it was like real intimate, and you could hardly hear the words, but the energy was like
Yeah.
it got me. I was like, wow, there's something in like you can't hear what he's saying, but you want to be with him, and you're like loving the strumming, and you're like sometimes you don't need words. And I was like, wow, that's a cool way. Like, is there something I can do around that? So I try and like throw myself out in different experiences. Like I walk the streets of New York. Earlier, and I
It's
just
got a dark ear to it, Ryan.
yeah.
You're walking the
I just
streets.
love. I was like, gee, there's something in this, the hustle bustle, the noise. But it made me alert. I was like, geez, I'm gonna have to have my wits about me. And like, is there a way to present a meeting when the players are on edge? They're like, oh, geez, we're gonna have to be on. Don't know what's coming at us. So I think it's just general experience in the classroom, and also just being open to, you know, exploring and being curious in our own environments.
Well, I also take note of something like culturally and part of your leadership which you do a lot of, is you've actually worked with some really top players, the likes of Aaron Smith and Bowden Barrett last year. So you're dealing with some high caliber international players. But I really liked that character that you talked about, because I know you have these little things that you do sometimes to actually build deeper connections. And I remember you talking about what you did on your screensavers, and I'm probably giving away a lot of your like inside your inside moments here, but this is a little thing which I think coaches will enjoy, is when you start up those little mini groups or your tech strats or groups, you have a different picture on your laptop cover. And
Yeah.
it looks like it's random. It's just you're just changing your pictures every day, but it's not. It's quite deliberate, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want to can you? And I love the stories around that. Can you share that story about hitting the person you want to hit with that picture on the screen?
Yeah, it's definitely a cool way to start a meeting. So I always have a different picture. So when it comes up on the TV screen, I'm not saying anything. The players come in and they look at the picture, and you can just see like it could be, so an example that one of my favorite ones was I ended up talking to Aaron around, like because he was an older guy in the team. And we kind of made a bit of a thing of it. Like I said, oh, me and you are the kind of the more experienced older guys here. We have to show these young fellas about movies and music they won't understand. And we talked about Back to the Future movie, and we're cracking up like, oh, the young fellas won't know that movie. But so I got a little screenshot of the Doc and Marty McFly, but I put Aaron and my face in it. And that was one of our screenshots. And so Aaron comes in, he looks at this. No one else knows what's going on. They're like, what's that a picture of? But Aaron looks at it and he's like, oh, that's me and Ryan in the Back to the Future movie. So it's like, then already he's like, oh, okay, that's like a wee funny thing that me and him happened. Like he's chuckling away before the meeting's even started. And
Yeah.
then the players are like, well, what's going on here? And Aaron's like, oh, you boys won't understand this. Like, so it's like it's silly little quirky things that build kind of cool little connections. Sometimes I might have a picture of myself surfing, like a hilarious picture, and they're kind of like, it just shows a little bit of a different side of who I am. And they might ask, oh, where was that? And then the surfers in the group are like, oh, that's a small wave. Can't you get a better one? So you start getting these cool little dialogues going before a meeting even starts. And it just relaxes the tone. And then boom, you go into your work.
Yeah,
It's
and
just,
it's what a great little tool to use, isn't it? Just to offset, like we talked about at the start, like starting not with the rugby
yeah,
is really a powerful thing. It just creates
yeah,
like, and I've seen you do it with those pictures. That the meeting starts with everybody talking about the picture, just to their
yeah,
neighbor next to them, or asking you questions, and it's
yeah.
creating that group dynamic feel, which is exactly what you want. And you haven't even touched on the reason why you're all there, which is to play rugby, which is
But it sets the
fantastic.
tone of the meeting. Like it's really easy then to maybe go into a niggly thing as well, because you kind of like you had this kind of soft start. This is probably something I keep coming back to, like that soft human start, and then the rugby comes second. Then whatever is coming with the rugby it's not a problem. Hey, we've had a
Mm.
little bit of laugh and we all feel relaxed. Always had a laugh at my surfing technique, so it's like we're all ready to go. Um, yeah, it's that soft start, eh? It's like getting everyone on the same page real fast.
Yeah, and it's just a human aspect to it too. And certainly, I feel that this is a way and a technique to use, particularly for modern coaching. Like if you tried to do some of the stuff 30 years ago, it wasn't the norm. I can imagine there'd be a lot of resistance against all this stuff. But if you're not even attempting this sort of stuff in this current era of coaching sport, you're not going to stay current, because society's changed, and coaches have to change with it. And the where we're at with coaching, we're coming through this level of society, and this sort of stuff 100% helps
Yeah.
you, whatever you are doing it for, the sport that you're doing it for. That's
Oh,
outstanding.
totally. You look at our dads, like the way they brought us up compared to how we would parent our kids. Like we took the best parts of what our dads did with us, but we've adapted it. And, because our kids are different, they've got different challenges, and it's exactly the same as our athletes. Like the way my dad parented me, geez, that would not work now. He'd be locked up. Yeah.
We won't go into details there. It goes down a dark and sordid path. But whilst we're talking about dark paths, mate, I guess I know yourself that you do actually draw a lot from the dark side of your experiences in life. I'm not saying having a kid at 18 is a dark side; it's a beautiful side, but it is an experience which is laced with a lot of it's tough. It's hard to be a single father raising kids, and I know that you do draw a lot from the dark side of life. Now, I'm interested to know what that means for you, like sort of culturally and leadership wise. I do know that you're very good at resonating with those that have gone through some dark times as well. But how do you draw on not just the positive experiences but the negative
Yeah,
experiences as well
yeah,
to to
yeah.
be better?
I think what I learned becoming a dad at that age, and like I had to go on the DPP, which is the dependent person's benefit. So I saw a real different side of life. I lost all my friends bar one who would come and visit me and my daughter because everyone freaked out. They're like, "Well, geez, what do you do with Ryan? He's got this little girl with him all the time now." They don't want to go to the parks, do the loop.
18-year-old boys don't want to go sit on the picnic mats at the
No,
park with the mum.
no, it was real interesting, just the way I was treated, going to the WINS office to get your payments and things, like the way you're treated there, going to banks. Like when I got my first job, I had to go and get a loan to get a car to get up to Auckland. And I got, ushered out of a bank very quickly. Like they were like, mate, are you kidding? Like, and like, it was just, I think I drawed a lot around that I would never, like, I have a real appreciation of how easy it is to be treated like that, and just learning around like the status and how people are treated, and it really irked me. And I made sure that whenever possible, I want to make sure people are really comfortable, no matter who. And um, even when I go and stay at a hotel, that you get a lot of in a rugby environment. For me, it's such a pleasurable, and I'm really grateful for it. And I always try and make sure I keep the room real tidy. I'm wary of the people that have to come and clean up after me, like just little things like that. And I think that's helped drive me, just having real appreciation. Like I just think rugby environments are amazing. You get kit, you get clothes. It's like awesome food, hotels, travel. Like I'm always so grateful. I just have the other side of life, I'm just so appreciative of that stuff. And I think because it's really genuine, it maybe like that's my personality a little bit. And that's what I was saying back, the team is a reflection of the coach's personality. The players know, hey, we go to hotels, we look after them, we're respectful of the cleaning staff, everybody. Then it just becomes a thing, and I think I learned a lot of resilience being a young father as well to get out of, a so-called hole that I would deem it at the time. Um, and it just gave me a real clear way of how I want to live my life and be to people. And I think that's where I draw that kind of inspiration from, like knowing the other side of life.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, mate. You are very generous with your time. I've seen you, like even where you're at the moment in Boston. Like I know when you got there, you're running clinics for club coaches and reaching out. I know when you're getting players to present, you just don't let them hang by themselves. You actually, give them phone calls. You get them to come see you, and you walk through their presentation. You chat through their presentation so they can deliver the next day and at least be um, as confident as they can be. And it's that level of care, I think, which probably derives from your own experiences where, you didn't
Yeah.
get a lot of care, right? And then you see it come out the other way, which is unreal, mate. And I think that's why those players, those professional players that I quoted earlier, just admire the way you develop relationships off the field.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really cool, mate.
Mm.
Another thing, which I just on that relationship front, I think this is a cool one too. Before we get onto our last stuff, is just some of those connections you do make, mate. Like I love the your attack strategy meetings went actually off site. Like they actually went off site. So that's another little quirk I just sort of get in. They became an event which everyone looked forward to. Instead of doing your attack strategy group in the environment, you actually said on a Wednesday night we're going to go out for dinner and have a few drinks, and then the boys got so into it that they began dressing up, and every fortnight when you had your attack strategy groups, you had to have a day off. Make sure we had the day off afterwards because the
Yeah.
guys were so charged for it. But that was lovely, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were, that's probably that soft thing again. Like it was hilarious because I've done it everywhere I go. And the first one's always so funny because they think it's going to be like this rugby content stuff. And so they get there and everyone's kind of prim and proper and waiting for us to talk about rugby. And then when I say, hey, boys, we're not doing any rugby tonight, they're like, oh, you see them almost like mentally.
Oh,
It's so cool. Like it's like having it becomes like, like this really cool forum where you have a little bit of a talk around stuff, and it just helps me coaching because then I have what I'd call like 4 or 5 disciples, and then just all our messages are shared. We all see the same stuff, and we become quite a tight knit group, which helps take the team in a direction that we want to.
love it, mate. Love it. Ryan, we've come to that time where there's only enough room for one more question and closing thoughts. The question is this, mate. Is there a coaching belief or principle that you hold that you think many of your peers might disagree with? And I ask that question because I just think this type of conversation really lends itself to challenging mindsets and thinking about the way we do things as a coach, and particularly around the culture and leadership stuff. So what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me, but I think there's something I do that if people were to look at it, they'd be like, well, that's probably not good coaching practice. But like I do skill drill to the point of like super, super deep rehearsal. So I'll just do the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And like if you were to come and watch, so I always start, just say for a backline session, we always start the same way, threading the ball through the post. But if you're to look at it, there's like little bits of lines. It's not like good coaching, like not, it's sometimes other guys are just watching and it's like, oh, they're doing the same thing every single, but for me, it like builds this kind of, it's like a starting point. And what we're actually secretly doing is subconsciously as a group, I don't say a word when we start a session. I just go on the whistle, they go to the post and they start throwing these threads. And it's every single session. It's the same thing. Nothing ever changes. But we start to build this kind of collective, like we become this morph into this one thing, and it sets a tone for the session. But if you're watching it from afar or coming from a coaching practice, you're like, oh, geez, like that looks a bit, there's 2 lines and they're lined up and they're waiting for a turn. And it goes against, modern kind of, oh, there should be little games or lots of people. There's not a word said. It's just the word of whatever the call of the passes that we're using. And it's just something I've learned, like deep rehearsal means you can retrieve things really quickly. And I think you've always got to stand for something. And like for me, it allows us as a group to have something that we hang our hats on. And I actually count the number before we do a failure of a pass. And as I said, it's every single session. Like we get up to, the very first time you do it, you might do 10 or 12 and that will be your finish point. Then you get to like a 100, 200, 300 within 3 minutes. Oh, and the boys kind of almost forget while we're doing it, but it just, as I said, it brings this kind of collective thing together, and then boom, we're ready for our work. And it's something I'm massive on, like not going away from like the fundamentals of really just real simple skill drill before you kind of go into anything else.
Well, I like it. I think that concept of the deep rehearsal means you can retrieve easier. Yeah. I think, and having seen you done that in all the drills that you often put up on your Instagram and stuff is a lot of that sort of stuff, that deep rehearsal. So you get a lot of cha-hoo in your sessions, which it does. When you watch one of your sessions, particularly those warm-up ones that start, there is something else which comes is like just the enjoyment the players have because they know 185% exactly what they're doing, and you hear people that are like, yeah, let's go, let's do this, and they just bring that energy, which is what you want from the start of any session.
Yeah.
Righto, Ryan. Hey, mate, what a pleasure it is to chat to you as always, and I always walk away with like just that little bit of something's twigged in me, a little bit of an aha moment. Like I feel like the way you think about rugby is not just rugby, it's about the people behind the rugby, and that's why I always love chatting to you, love coaching with you, mate. So thank you for today. Go well.
Thank you very much. Great questions.